Hello and welcome to my first training session with the Ojibwe Spirit Ponies. It's actually a myth that horses, as they are now, are not native to North America. This is a colonial myth that all the horses that exist here were brought over by Columbus era colonizers. This is not backed up by fossil record, by our written historical records, as well as by the traditional knowledge of the Indigenous peoples across this land. Now, there are many different types of horses that are native to this land, but these three ponies that I'm working with today are the Ojibwe pony, also called the Spirit Pony, Lac LaCroix pony, and then in Anishinaabe or the Ojibwe language, they have multiple names as well, depending on which group of people we're speaking. They were called Bezhigooganzhii or Mishtadim. And then, of course, there are many other words for horse in different Indigenous languages across Turtle Island. The ancestors of these ponies were trained and worked with the native people for trapping, pulling, hauling, as well as transportation. They're forest dwellers, so they were meant to live in forested areas with lots of tree cover, not in like open plains that we might see in other areas of the world. These ponies once lived widely across what is now Ontario, Michigan, Minnesota, the Great Lakes region of North America, but they were largely destroyed in the early 1900s when colonizers saw no use for them, said they were pests, and nuns believed that it was inappropriate for children to witness the ponies breeding. In 1977, the last four mares of the Ojibwe pony breed were set to be destroyed in Ontario. They were deemed as pests and disease risks by the Canadian government. But five elderly men, Wally Olson, Bob Walker, Walter Satella, Omar Hilda, and Fred Isham, staged a heist where they drove these last remaining mares across the frozen water into a farm in Minnesota. There, they would be carefully bred with a Spanish Mustang, and currently their numbers are up to around 200 ponies. The three ponies that I'm working with in this video are Muskwa. Bear, he's the big black colt. He's definitely the most confident of the group. He is the most outgoing and definitely the quickest to come around to human contact. He really likes his bum scratched, and so once he trusts you, they kind of spin around and push into you so you scratch his bum. Then there's Gabi Gek Gek, or Hawk. He's this brown colt. He is also very sweet and outgoing, but a little more shy and reserved than Muskwa. And the youngest of the three ponies, Ozaawa Bezhigooganzhii Babamose, which is Anishinaabe for golden horse that wanders, or sky. He is the little bay dun. He's definitely struggling the most out of all three with domestication. He was weaned younger than the others, and he is more fearful and worried than the other two, but he is coming along with them. I'm working with these ponies where they live on the traditional, ancestral, and unceded land of the Mississauga, Haudenosaunee, Attawandaron, and Anishinaabe people in Treaty 29. This land today is called Tavistock, Ontario, and these ponies live at an equine assisted learning farm called Transitions Acres. I myself am a white settler. I was born and raised on this land in Ontario, Canada. I'm volunteering to help gentle and train these ponies so that they can learn how to live alongside of humans and also as a way to participate in reconciliation through one of the things that I'm really good at, which is horse training. The end goal is for these ponies to become participants in an equine assisted learning program, as well as to participate in educational and cultural events for the local community. What you've seen in the video so far is me just gathering information about where these ponies are starting from. They are essentially unhandled before they were put in a trailer and brought to this new facility. And so I'm testing out the waters and getting an idea of what they're like when they're reacting to loud noises, as you saw when I was stomping on the ground, clapping my hands, see if they startle easy due to noise. And then I'm also gathering information as to how close I can get to them before they even notice I'm there or become frightened. So I'm just walking around outside of the bubble where I've seen them react. And here I decide to get closer and see what happens if I try to pick up some of the hay that they're eating. As you can see, this does startle them. It especially startles Sky, who rears up. But then you can see Bear, the big black one. He is already ready to take food out of my hand or even just be curious about that. We have seen that Sky is struggling with some feelings of worry and scarcity around specifically food. He was the youngest to be weaned, and so he can be reactive and defensive around the food. This is what we call resource guarding. He feels like food is a scarce resource that he really needs. And so when I'm handling the food there, he feels like the resource is under threat. And so he wants to let me know that this is his resource so that he can maintain access to it and stay safe. So you saw when he was showing those, we could say aggressive behaviors, but to me, they're definitely reading more as fear and uncertainty and worry and scarcity. I'm not punishing him for that behavior. You might think that by not punishing a behavior like that, that you're not telling the horse that that was wrong. What I'm trying to do is I'm trying to stay as neutral as possible if I do see that behavior triggered, because what I don't want to do is reaffirm that Sky does need to be doing that resource guarding behavior. What I want to do is help Sky feel very safe around the food so that he doesn't feel the need to resource guard in the future. And I also want to, especially in these early stages, avoid triggering the behavior in the first place. So I'm trying to stay far enough away from him that he doesn't even feel the need to resource guard in the first place. So with Bear here, I'm doing something called classical conditioning. I'm associating me with a appetitive or enjoyable stimulus. In this case, it's the hay. And I'm associating these stimuli together so that he learns that my presence is associated with good things. And so my presence itself is a good thing. The other two still are in some way being classically conditioned because they are still receiving the food reinforcer, but they're also undergoing something called habituation. This is just where an animal gets used to something over time because they learn that it's just kind of neutral. So when I'm standing in this spot here, they honestly aren't even really caring that I'm there, but they are getting used to people being close to them at below their threshold where they would begin to show fear or anxiety. If I were looking at this training video trying to judge how good or bad of a training session this is based off of my consistency, timing, technique, etc., it looks like I am moving and behaving and training completely randomly. which isn't entirely untrue. But the point of this first session is to feel out where these ponies are and make plans for where I'm going to continue to go based off of those observations. So I'm mostly just gathering information rather than trying to apply a consistent training approach with them. What I learned from this session is that I wanted to focus more on Sky for my operant conditioning approaches, and then allow the other two, Hawk and Bear, to develop more just through habituation. Because I'm seeing those two are much more naturally calmer and more curious, whereas Sky is showing some more stress, frustration, fear, and worry behaviors. So if I'm approaching his threshold, I know that the other two are likely well under threshold. And so I'm not risking sensitizing them to me as a scary stimulus. Right about here is where I realize that I am too close for Sky's comfort. And so I decide to continue the session from behind the barrier so that I can give us a bigger air bubble between us to help increase Sky's feelings of safety and move more slowly so that I'm not making him feel threatened. And also as protected contact so that I'm not physically at risk if he were to decide to come closer and kick out at me or something. I didn't manage to record that mostly because it was pretty windy and my tripod would have blown over if I didn't tuck it behind a planter. But I did get some video that I filmed from my own point of view that I'll share with you right now. In this video here, I'm using some more approach and retreat with Sky. So I'm really paying attention and trying to shape a specific behavior using the release of pressure as a way to increase the likelihood of the behavior happening again. Usually I try to use more positive reinforcement, which is the addition of something the horse likes to increase the likelihood of the behavior happening again. But at this stage where the ponies aren't really comfortable taking those food rewards or other appetitives from me, negative reinforcement will hopefully get us closer to a starting point where I can use positive reinforcement with them. So in this clip, you see that I approach just to where I can see that Sky notices my presence. And then when he offers some form of positive engagement with me, that can be as little as kindly look or a flicker of the ear or a raise of the head. I'm I'm taking a step back, so I'm releasing the pressure. Because at this point, me getting too close is seen to him as a threat. It's seen as pressure. It's something that's aversive and that he doesn't like. And so when he shows the behavior that I want, I'm moving backwards to release that pressure, which it's not the same as a reward, but it is reinforcing the behavior. What I want to do is to help Sky get some practice interacting with me in like a curious or safe or uh, positive way rather than going too close too quickly and triggering the fear-based aggressive behaviors that I was seeing. I also want to avoid punishing him if he were to come up close and smell me by trying to reach out and touch him or staying too close for too long. I want to make sure that am reinforcing the behaviors that I want to see instead of accidentally punishing him by lingering for too long. This was only my first session with the ponies, but the plan is to continue working with them so that they can gain all of the skills that a domestic horse needs for life alongside humans, such as leading behaviors, hoof care and farriery, trailer loading, etc. so that they can be safe and handleable in this domestic environment. I plan to be recording all of my sessions, or at least as many as I can, and recording voiceovers for them and sharing them here on YouTube so that I can let other people into the process behind gentling these very, very special ponies and also increase education and awareness of this very special and rare breed that's so important to Turtle Island's history and also the Indigenous people. With that, I thank you very much for hanging around and watching this first video. If this is something you'd like to see more of in the future, hit the subscribe button so that you can see when I post next. And feel free to comment any questions or comments you have below, and I'd love to invite you into the conversation. Remember that the future is brighter because you're here to be in it.